going to preview the Baylor at Kansas State women's soccer game, and the game will be played on October 1st at 1 p.m. Central Time on ESPN Plus. And first of all, Baylor is 5-2 on the year, 0-3-1 in the conference. And ironically, Kansas State has the same conference record, but the overall record is 2-7-3. This is a must-win for both because, look, if they get a win, and let's just assume Iowa State would lose, and they play BYU on Monday, which BYU got a tie with Cincinnati, so I would assume BYU is going to take a step forward. Try to get a win this next game. But even if they don't get a win, and Kansas plays Texas, by the way, and that's in Lawrence, and I have to assume, even if there's a tie, it does Kansas no good because that would only be 3 points because 3 ties, and ties are worth a point, while wins are worth 3. And obviously losses, they're worth 0. Nada. It's the truth because then they could automatically go up to tie for 10th place in the conference. But if Iowa State would lose for sure instead of a tie, then it's a whole different story for both of these teams, both Kansas State and Baylor, because they would automatically go up to 10th. And West Virginia does play Houston, but Houston's winless in the conference right now. Granted, that game is on the road, so I'm pointing that out, that it's important for both of these teams here, especially you need to get your first conference win, because ties does no good for either team here at all. Because let's just assume that Kansas, even if they get a tie, it doesn't. Both of these teams are behind them. You don't want to be in that situation where you're in the bottom 3, and there's 5 more conference games after this. That's the truth. Especially when you look at the schedule remaining for both of these teams. First of all, Kansas State has Houston at home, but they go on the road to BYU. I have to assume BYU is going to win that match. They have West Virginia at home, but West Virginia, they've been down somewhat recently. But I would think West Virginia is better. Iowa State is a coin flip, and I would also say Kansas is also a coin flip. So they only have 2 tricky opponents left, I would say, but it's not a given they're going to beat everybody else after Baylor for Kansas State here. And I'm telling the truth. While for Baylor side of things, they got Iowa State at home, which they better win their home game, that home game right there, in my opinion, because you gotta have to win all your home games as much as possible. You gotta go on the road to UCF, but UCF lost recently, so I don't know. That's gonna be a tougher game. Then you got Cincinnati at home, which they better win that one. Baylor needs to win those 2 games, like I said. Then on the road to TCU. Then after TCU, they have at Houston. They should beat Houston, in my opinion. Baylor should, but will they? And I honestly think they should beat Kansas State too, to be honest. I would have to think. But then again, it is what it is. And really, they just only have 2 tougher opponents left in UCF and TCU. And both of those are on the road. Granted, it's not givens for the other ones, of course. And TCU is 3-0-1 in the conference right now. So it's not even a given to beat those guys. And UCF is currently at 3-1 in the conference. So I'm just pointing that out, how important this game is first, before diving into the stats for Kansas State. And I do not know about any yellow cards, how many of those per player, or I don't think there was a red card last game, so I would have to assume everybody would be fine for that. But let's just say Kansas State has used a bunch of formations this year. But the last game, they used 5 defenders, 1 midfielder, and 4 forwards. They could go with a variety, and you could check out in the description below on that. The starting goalie for the season so far, which granted, I know they could change it up because BYU changed that up on us. I mean, I'm telling the truth. Maybe that BYU goalie got hurt in the game before. I don't know. But still, it's notable. Is Murphy Sheaf, number 1, 5'9" goalie as a sophomore, 12 goals allowed in 36 saves. But let me go over some other key players besides that. Aliyah El Negar, number 4, 5'6" defender. That's a senior, 2 goals and 6 shots to 10. That's the only reason why I'm mentioning her. Kieran Singh, Singh, number 11, 5'4" forward. That's a senior, 10 shots attempted and 3 assists. Joe Sees, number 17, 5'7" forward. That's a freshman, 2 goals on 10 shots attempted and 1 assist. Maddie Weichel, number 22, 5'4" forward. That's a senior, 1 goal and 8 shots attempted. That's the only reason why I'm mentioning her after that. It's not much. Jasmine Brown, number 25, 5'10" defender. That's a sophomore, 2 goals on 9 shots attempted. And the last player that's notable only because of they scored this year is Morgan Strutman, number 31, 5'5" forward. That's a freshman, 1 goal and 20 shots attempted. I'm just being clear, they don't have a lot of shots attempted, and I will say that going into this game, you have to be better on not allowing so many shots for the opponent, for the Baylor side of things. I'm telling the truth when you look at the stats, what happened last game. And granted, I know some of it might have been counterattacks, but still, they were just getting no pressure on the other team and letting Kansas State come down at them. You can't allow that to happen to Kansas State too. You shouldn't. I would also say you had double-digit corner kicks last game. You got nothing out of it. You have to execute your set pieces and score off of those. That would help a lot. I'm just saying, it's not the common way to score goals, but it's a little bit easier than instead of having just a pass, or pass then score, or pick off a pass and then score. But you get the point. You got to execute that. Of course, you don't want a red card to be a down player and then the player has to be suspended next game. Honestly, you don't want 2 yellows, which is the same thing as a red, or a foul in the box on defense, or a handball in the box on defense. You have to be aggressive defensively, and offensively, you got to put more. It's not like the number of shots. It's more like putting a lot more pressure instead of just jacking up shots just to jack up shots. And I get it doesn't have to be pretty to score goals here. I'm just saying that because it's the truth and all this. And obviously you gotta just learn from what happened last game and try to apply it to this one. So I'm just saying that because you gotta have crisp passing and all that. I mean, that's the truth. And Kansas had a lot more shots in the second half when you look at the stats, so you don't want to allow that. But I know Kansas last game did not get a lot of shots at all. And you got to have good ball possession I mean, try to put the Kansas State on the defense instead of yourself as much as possible. In the second half, yeah, Kansas had 14 shots in the second half. You allowed 20 in the game. They only had 6 in the first half. I mean, like I said, 11 corner kicks, and Kansas only had 4. And of course, on defense, when it comes to the corner kicks, you got to clear the ball out immediately, or when they're in your own end, try to clear it out after you have to block their shots. And of course, you got to make sure you give no clean looks whatsoever, and I mean, and make them make mistakes on their passing too. And of course, we know we don't want to count on refs for calling a handball in the box on the opponent or foul in the box, because you know how consistent they are. They're not at times. So I'm just saying that on both sides here, because you got to leave no doubt if you're either one of these two teams here. Because the last thing you want to do is just count on the ref to make a call. And that's kind of what happened last year. And that's why Kansas State won. I'm being clear. I mean, it was a foul in the box. They called it. And I don't think that was a good call. And when you look at the replay, it was a little bit of a dive, to say the least. But you know. And I honestly don't know if Jenna Patterson is going to even play for Baylor. She did not even make an appearance last game against Kansas. And remember, she got hurt against BYU last week. I mean, I'm just telling the truth. And of course, on like their set pieces on defense, you got to mark every player. And you got to be aware of the outline. Don't allow like a clear backdoor shot to anybody or all that. I mean, on the pass. So I'm just saying that just to say. And of course, you got to make adjustments on the fly. And granted, I do not know what the weather is going to be like in Manhattan, Kansas. And hopefully it is good enough weather that you don't have to deal with rain delay or weather delay or any of that. Hopefully it's not. And with that being said, I'm going to just double check that right now. Yeah, it's going to be fine. But there could be a hydration break, but I'm not going to say you should count on it necessarily, because you know, it just depends on the temperature and the humidity too, in order to get to that point. And you're gonna have to adjust with the wind as well. And you don't want to turn the ball over in your own side of the field offensively when you're defending in for either end in the house here. I would also say make them do that instead. I mean, force them into mistakes and then try to score off of them. And Kansas State is a game for Baylor that is winnable. And I know it is on the road. But you can't tell me that they are a great team. They're not. I'm sorry. It's the truth. When you look at the record, Baylor is the better team. Though you can't take it for granted. You got to come out with energy, and you come out with fire, and you got to have a sense of urgency. And I'm saying that because, to me, this feels like a must-win game for Baylor in order to think about conference tournament at this point. You have to beat Kansas State, where you're better than that. But obviously you have to go out and prove it, get a win here. And Kansas State last game only had 5 shots, and 3 of those came from one player. Yeah, and TCU had 15 shots. So there is a possibility that you're going to get more shots in this game and then score some. Of course, you got to have your goalie step up, either Mackenzie Short or Ashley Zirkle step up, in a game like this, because this is a critical game here. And I hate to say must win, but it is the truth because, like I said, you got UCF on the road. That's not going to be easy. You got TCU on the road. That's not going to be easy down the line. But I would dare to say the other 3 games on the schedule, Houston, Cincinnati, and Iowa State, all 3 of those winnable. And even though Houston's on the road, and I get it, but Houston is the worst team in the conference up to this day. They're winless. There is a way to beat those guys, to beat them. So you have to beat Kansas State, and I would dare to say this is a must-win game here. You got to beat Iowa State. You got to beat Cincinnati. You got to beat Houston. But I would also say I'm not sure if 4 wins would be enough to make the conference tournament. It does have to depend on the results as well. But I would just say let's leave no doubt and try to win out. That way you have no pressure going into the last game. And even like when you look, I know the chances of an NCAA tournament appearance is possibly a long shot in all this. I know it is. But if you do win out, I'm not like the RPI should go up. And I'm not going to put that pressure on them to make the NCAA tournament this year necessarily. I'm just saying it would really help their RPI if they went out for the regular season and then have a little bit of a run. But even then, I'm not sure is it enough because it's tricky for RPI at times, especially when this is the last year of the Pac-12, and that's one more RMAC qualifier. After this year, it's going to be one less, so it's going to open up a bubble. But I'm just telling the truth in all this. We're in the 70s right now, and it would really help to win this winnable game here against Kansas State. And I know the coaching staff's going to always be ready, and of course you got to attack the weaknesses for Kansas State. You got to and limit those strengths. If not, give them none of their strengths. So, and now I'm going to put the stats in the description below so y'all can see it. Anyways, if you like this content, hit the like and subscribe button. See you guys later. We're on the road to 600 subscribers now. Let's go.